or 5 parking spaces.
Well,
It's
those parking
more-
spaces are pretty, I mean, there's 3 parking
8 foot
spaces
wide, so
before the door.
You're probably talking 12 parking spaces minimum, and then you have a bigger entrance than what you have in the front to deal with.
That's another question I had. You've got how many tables out there?
I don't know how many tables I'm going to have, Dan. That's just conceptual to show you that there would be tables on the patio. It's a conceptual architect's drawing. I don't know yet how many tables I'm going to have out there.
I think you've got 2 tables for
I
every.
mean, I know I'm going to do bean toss, and that's 30 feet. So, I'm really not sure how many tables are going to be out there.
You've got 2 tables for every alley, basically. If you have 24
that's-
alleys,
That's,
Or
when they
one
show
table for
flowers,
each.
it doesn't show exactly how many flowers are going to be in the flower bed either,
But let me follow up on, I think, what Alderman Schalke is getting at here is, we are supposed to approve or deny a variance based on your need, and we don't really understand from this plan how you're gonna use the space, because you and your architect are still thinking about it, which, it's not that I don't understand that, but it is a good question, because that leads to, do you need the 15 feet? Can you live with 12 feet? Can we make a compromise with the sidewalk? But showing conceptual tables and not the actual activities that you have in mind, at least as of this point, makes it difficult for this body to ascertain, how does your need outweigh our ordinance? And if we can get to that point, then good, and we move forward.
I wish I could tell you that. I haven't
I think
got
that's
that
kind of
far.
critical to asking for a variance. How are you gonna use it?
How many tables I'm going to
No,
have out
what are
there?
you gonna do with the space?
Well, I told you what I'm
How,
going to do
okay,
with the
well, then
space.
how does that relate to a 15-foot width? Was that all you had, Alderman Schalke, right now?
Pardon
Are you finished with your comments for the moment?
me? There are some others, but I'll bring them up later.
Alderman Police has been waiting for a while, then I'll call on Alderman Winger.
Basically, the B4 main objective was to put in a transit-oriented district
Okay.
and provide a facelift to downtown, where the city's already stepped up and started with the Cornerstone train station. That'll be our cornerstone building, basically. I personally don't have a problem with the 5-foot sidewalk you have, Mr. Malone, providing you're putting in a kitchen and you're gonna be serving food. But I'm looking at the letter here from Zoning Board of Appeals, and it says kitchen to be added at a later date. So that's telling me, really, we're gonna get a patio right now.
You're going to get them both. You're going to get them both.
I'm hearing bean bags being played out on Irving Park Road. I don't think we want bean bags being played on Irving Park Road. I'm hearing we're starting to have a problem at Crossroads, going into the parking lot, and something's going on over there. I didn't get the whole story yet, but I will this coming week. If we're just gonna do bean bags, put it to the side of the building. If we wanna put in a kitchen, I know this isn't a restaurant, I know this isn't part of the B4, it should, but I'd be more than happy to vote yes if I knew the kitchen, if everything was contingent upon final plans showing that the kitchen was going in, that there was, food was gonna be served out there, and it wasn't gonna be bean bags and just a smoking lounge, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing was the frontage of the building. Right now, I know there was an addition.
2 additions.
Right, so you got 2 different color bricks, a stone in the front. Now, I'm seeing that part of this, the west side maybe changed some of the brick and added some more stone. The fence, stamped concrete, that's another, 2 kinds of bricks, a stone and now stamped concrete. This building just doesn't look uniform. I'm.
That's part of what I'm trying to do is make it more uniform.
Right. And this picture maybe is not doing it justice and I'm not seeing it right. But for me, I would be fine if I knew the final plans, everything was contingent upon final
There
plans.
is going to be a kitchen. I'm telling you that now. That-
With the kitchen and the use of beanbags out on Irving Park. I have a
I'm
problem.
not gonna
with
be
it.
on Irving Park. It's gonna be inside the contained patio. That's not on Irving Park. I mean, it's, I don't know. It sounds to me like your vision of what you're describing is not what I'm seeing there. I don't know.
Right, I'm, you know, I'd like to see, I'd really like to see the building, right, brought up to date. You've mentioned that, maybe these plans just don't do it justice. But as far as the 12-foot sidewalk, I mean, your building is existing, and basically, we have to live with that, and I'd love to see you put in a kitchen and create more business and more tax dollars for the city. It's just that I would like to see the building look a little more uniform. I'm hearing stamped concrete, I'm kind of thinking, you got a color brick here, one here, stone in the middle, and stamped concrete. I'm just not visioning something that's gonna look, uniform. But otherwise, I mean, if we can see these things, I'd be more than happy to.
I mean, I have a brochure on stamped concrete if you want to see what it looks like, but I'm not sure
not an
that that's
expert
gonna
on
help
that.
you too much more than what the
Like I
drawings
said,
show.
the elevation maybe doesn't do it justice, but
There's a wall very similar to what I envision it looking like, that's up in a couple towns already where I've seen, there's even one on 83 over there where there's a factory where they have a fence on top of a wall similar to what I'm proposing, and they didn't even use stamped concrete, and I'll tell you what, it looks pretty good to me. I don't know if you've ever been over on 83 where that used to be a Northrop factory, I believe, but it's something else now, but they have a wall similar to that there, so maybe that would help you vision it,
I'll take a drive by there.
Okay. Or before I give the mic to Alderman Winger, I want to follow up on Alderman Police's comments. Mike, you say that one of the goals here is to unify and kind of clean up this facade, which is, I think we'll all agree, busy. And I truly believe that's always been your intent, but I think it's disappointing what I see here. The brick on the western third is not likely to really match the brick on the eastern third. Maybe it'll be close enough with that stone in the middle to not be obvious, but 35-plus-year-old brick is I don't think is matchable. Adding yet another element with the canvas awning, so now we're adding another piece. Now the concrete embutment wall is another material, with the stamped detail in it, and then of course the railing on top of it. So what we have here is, I think, a couple more different quantity of finishes than we're starting with today. So
more complementary finishes though than
I
what
don't
was
know
there
that
previously.
though. I got no specs. I don't know that. I mean, I might be a lot more willing to lay off if I really knew this was going to look better, but I don't. I mean, how many times? And this isn't. I'm not saying that this is that you're trying to get off on the cheap, or you're not really trying to do what you're saying. I believe that you are. But how many times applicants have come before us and gave us kind of light plans and said, well, it's going to be better because it's going to have this and it's going to have this, and then it goes up and you go, oh, wow, we really approve that, huh? And that's what I don't want to be in the situation here. And like I say, just from what I have here, maybe they are all complementary finishes, but maybe they're not. There's certainly more finishes. So that's all I'm saying. It's just just another aspect to the argument. Alderman Winger.
Thank you. I believe at least a majority of the council wants to work with you on this.
Okay.
I want to work with you on this. And I have a couple of questions. First being, I want to learn more about this partial south elevation drawing. Is it?
I'm sorry, the what?
The partial south elevation drawing that we were just
The
discussing.
brick that you're talking
Yes.
about? Yeah.
So is it purely putting a facade on the building, or are you extending anything as well?
No, I'm not
that.
extending it. I have two choices there, and I'm actually picking the more expensive choice to actually take the face brick off and put another face brick in its place. I could have done what they did to the dental building in Addison, where it used to be Blockbuster,
Yeah.
and they applied an aluminum
Right.
thing on there, and then they hook like thin brick onto it, and then they pastry bag mortar it, and it does look like brick, but I chose to actually have a mason take off the brick that's there and put, that's the way I'm leaning, is to do it that way, because I think it's the right way to do it. I could have chose drive it the whole front of the building. I also chose not to do that. I think that the brick I'm going to choose, you're correct, John, it's not going to be exactly that brick, but it's also not exactly right next to it. And if you look at the front of my building now, there was a flood prevention thing put in where there used to be a metal railing by the stair that's there for the basement. That brick doesn't match the other brick, but you can't tell that. So, yeah, you're not going to match a 30-year-old brick, but you can get close enough that it'll blend, and that's what I intend to do. I have samples in my office that are pretty close to that brick. Now, it's hard to, I'm not a bricklayer, so I haven't really chosen the final choice out, because I have trouble seeing a big swatch of that when you're looking at 4 or 5 bricks on a sample plate. But I hold them up to that wall that's on the west side, and they're pretty darn close. And then if you look at, and I don't know if this isn't really a good elevation to see it, but there's sills in that building, and then like in front of the west part under the windows, there's sections where the stone that's in the middle already comes into the west section, so that would still be there, so it would be that brick blending with the stone. In the section that's stone, there's sections of the brown brick intermingled with that, so that would be replaced too, to blend with the facade renovation on the west side. So these areas I'm talking about would also kind of bring the middle in together with, doesn't show this whole middle section is stone. So it would kind of blend. And as far as the awning, it's an elevation thing. It's the awning because that's what I need to use to cover the one section. I think it's going to look good. And when you look at some of the awnings that are around, I mean, even on the old Sanddollar building, which is now 3Js, I think it's called, or JBs, when they put the awning on that building, as old and maybe decrepit that building is, it still looks better with an awning on it and a mansard like that, or a architectural point on the front of it, than it did without it. And I just think it's going to tie into that line on the front of the building, and instead of seeing a third and a third and a third, you're going to see a line that goes all the way through it. And that's what I'm trying for. And as far as believing me, I'm not some developer just walking into this town. I've been in business in this town since 1978. I've been on the board of the Chamber of Commerce for 25 years. I'm not somebody who doesn't speak the truth when I talk about what I try to do in Wooddale. So I volunteer, I do all the things, and I've never, and I check with anybody that knows me, ever gone back on my word. So if I tell you that's what I'm trying to do, that's what I'm trying to do. It's not what you see when you do a townhouse development and they don't finish it because they don't live in Wooddale. I live in Wooddale, I own a house in Wooddale, I own a business in Wooddale, and I live and die Wooddale just as much as anybody on this council. So that's where I'm at with it.
Okay, and as a follow-up question or discussion, instead of taking almost the whole frontage of the bowling alley with this outdoor area, I see an opportunity where we take a portion of it, but take it in some, so it's not coming out as far, but wrapping it around at least one side of the building. And I know you're gonna take out some parking spots, but maybe you won't have to take out as much if you wrap around and you take advantage of both front as well as side. Is that something that you can consider to help make this work?
The biggest problem with the side is, like I discussed before, not maybe that if, I don't even know if I can get past the parking stipulations. I may be able to do that going partway into the house to recreate some parking spaces. I don't want less parking spaces than I have now because at times I use them. But the distance from my normal operations is a lot further when you do it on the side. So it creates a situation where I'd have to be an outdoor eating cafe. I'd have to have waitresses out there. I'd have to have a whole nother staff out there to run that business, because you can't run a liquor business and not be able to see what's going on in it. You'd have to be an inside staff and an outside staff. And the front of the building, the reason I put it where I was trying to put it was so that I could do that with the least amount of additional staff that I could do it with and do it right. So it's to be able to responsibly serve the alcohol out there and know what's going on and do it right. That's why I want it in the front, not on the side. It has nothing to do with, although I think there would be some tensions with the parking spaces and how many it would take away, because if you go on the side, you've got a lower building elevation, you would lose some things. You would lose the facade renovation, or you would lose most of it, you know. I don't know, I haven't really designed it on the side, so I'd have to kind of look at the yin and yang of it to see if it was possible to do it there. But I just did what I envisioned staff-wise, and maintaining it and running it correctly. I think it'll be a lot harder to do on the side than it would be to do in the front.
Mr. Forrest, did you have a comment on this part of the discussion?
I did have a comment. I think Mr. Malone just sort of addressed that, but that's one thing that really hasn't come up yet in the discussions. If he was to relocate this area to the side of the building, as has been suggested,
Or a portion of.
or a portion of it, we would, of course, have to do a parking count of what his required parking is per the number of lanes he has, per the occupancy load of the bar, the viewing area, and so forth. But the thing that I would be concerned about, and actually Mike just raised that point, if you've been in the bowling alley, you know that when you come in either side door, that's sort of remote from the control center of the bowling alley. Part of the purpose of having this outdoor area is so people can take their drinks out there, have a cigarette. If he has this patio area on a remote section of the building, it is going to become a control issue, and it's going to be a monitoring issue to be sure that people that are out there drinking are over 21 and they're not slipping drinks to kids, and at that point becomes almost a security issue, being sure that underage drinking isn't happening. And then, of course, we do have the parking issue. The other comment that I would make is if he's thinking about redoing the facade, maybe more of a color rendering or something might be helpful, but if he's going to be incorporating some stone panels into the front of the building, perhaps those same type of panels or that same look is what we ought to have that wall look like, so that everything sort of works together.
And there is one that matches similar to that. And I haven't gotten down to choosing those choices, but there is one that is pretty close to the flagstone. I don't know what I'm going to use in the flat yet as far as a pattern, but I was pretty sure that that's the pattern that I plan on using for the upright section of the wall, which I'm trying to make the wall look better. I think the guardrail looks terrible. You know, I've seen it other places, and I don't think it looks all that good. And I knew you were going to ask for that, or you were going to ask for something similar to that, and I didn't want it to look like that. I think this will look better.
Before I go into the next discussion point, I do believe that we need to look at that of a combination of front as well as side. And I'm convinced it can work. And I understand what you're saying about the monitoring issue, but at the same time, I find it, hard that every staff inside is gonna watch all the time outside, even if it is in front. That's a big stretch, and there's a lot going on in the bowling alley on league night, that sort of thing. So I believe it can work if we take some on the side, as long as you're staffed appropriately. And I'm not saying you have to hire 3 bouncers or whatever the case may be, but I believe
I think you're
that
saying
there's
that without
something
trying
like-
to, though, because I know from my experience of running a bar since I was about 18 years old, which is a long time ago now, that would probably be the case. Especially if it went over as good as I wanted to, and it was busy out there, and summertime crowd is going to be young people, and young people need to be watched when they're drinking. And I think it would probably double my staff.
Okay, and according to the drawing as presented, if, I know we can't do the 12-foot sidewalk easily, but how many feet of sidewalk can go in easily now as it stands?
Again, as designed, the existing sidewalk may be able to be widened a foot or two, most likely. If the
To total how much?
6 or 7.
So
If-
to get to 6 or 7?
If
Okay.
the design, as you see, has these areas where it juts back in to allow for some landscaping, if the entire patio were pulled back to that point, a 10-foot sidewalk could be accomplished.
I would think you could do maybe even a little better than that, Russ. I've been doing some measuring this week, and when you look at where the two poles are, the portion in front of the patio, I don't think is where either pole is. You probably still could fit, without me moving anything, you could still probably fit your 12-foot sidewalk. You'd have to maybe cut into my property when you got to the point where the two phone poles were. But I think they're both past, I'm almost positive they're both past the patio. So,
But again, with that issue, that would go into the IDOT regulation or review of it, and they're not interested in having a sidewalk serpentine down Irving Park Road. I asked that question point blank of them.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then Alderman Winger, I think last
Okay,
question here.
thank you. Last thing, the fencing. Can you explain in more detail the fencing? At one point, I heard wrought iron, I believe, but then removable, I also heard. So what
no,
is the
the
fencing
fencing
gonna?
is not removable.
Okay, what part is removable?
On this awning, the wider awning, there would be an area where you could snap a wall that would drop in the wintertime off of the awning. The fencing itself would always be.
Okay,
And it would either be, there's two types of fencing that lend themselves to that open look, and there's an aluminum one, and there's a wrought iron one. I'm kind of leaning towards the wrought iron because I'm told it's sturdier than a lot of the aluminum ones, although I haven't got actual bids on that yet, so. But my leanings are toward the wrought iron.
okay, thank you.
Alderman Police, I think you're next.
Again, I would be in favor of going forward, but I have a few ifs and maybes that are not answered. And we had this about a year ago, the council, we had some consolidation, not your property, Mr. Malone, but somebody else. There was a consolidation of a couple of parcels. There was supposed to be a brand-new addition put in in the middle, and it was gonna be one contiguous building, one lot. Instead, we still have two buildings on one lot, which is non-conforming, and we never put any stipulations on that one. It was passed, I voted no, and unless I see more specifics, I'm gonna vote no unless, I know, see, you're telling me the kitchen's going in, over here it's saying at a later date. And I'm not sure about the facade matching or becoming more uniform. If I knew that was becoming more uniform, and I knew the kitchen was going in when the final prints went in, I'll be honest with you, I know this isn't a restaurant and it's not an outdoor eating cafe, but if you are adding the kitchen, you are gonna be serving food, I would be more than happy to vote for this. But with all the ifs and maybes, I'll tell you right now, I cannot do that.
What else can I tell you to tell you that I'm putting a kitchen in? I've told you 4 times that I'm putting a kitchen in. If you don't believe me, you don't believe me, I guess, but.
I mean, it would have to go into the motion that would have to be one of the stipulations.
For me, I have no knowledge of you ever lying, and I believed you when you said that you don't, and I
Yeah.
believe that this is your intention. I'm 38 years old, and I've never seen an economy like we see right now either. So if things keep getting worse, any of our best intentions today just might not be possible in 12 months. So as for myself, I'd like to see the two projects go simultaneous.
They will be.
Well, but once again.
I'm not gonna draw
we
you a
have-
plan for a kitchen because
'Cause you don't know
when
what's
you
going
buy
on
it
here.
from a place like Schweppes, they draw the pictures for you.
Of course,
and
of
they,
course.
they submit it to the health department for you.
But
So
what Alderman Police was getting at was the same thing I'm going to say. I mean, if this is approved in the form in which you presented it or some altered form, that I would certainly want that to be a stipulation.
problem with that.
This doesn't get permitted and built until you're under permit for the kitchen. Now,
I have no problem with that.
okay. Now, as long as we're talking about things that we want to see to maybe make this happen, Ross says he's pretty sure that we might be able to take that sidewalk a foot to the south, maybe pushing 2 feet, but we don't know that exactly for sure. And like I was saying to you before, Mike, it seems to me that you're asking for the full 15 feet, and you'll figure out how to fill it later. But my responsibility, as I see it, to grant the variance is tell me what you need, show it to me graphically, and I'll be
I
a
want
lot more
the 15
likely.
feet because it's a number that works. I mean, I already have to take
But
that
what-
15 feet and I have to put that foundation wall, which is probably 12 inches thick, so I'm losing a foot there. So when I'm all said and done, I'm ending up with 14 by 100, which is a usable space. Now, if I start to narrow that down by a couple feet, it's not as much of a usable space as it needs to be.
One of your plans already has that narrowed down by a couple of feet. The alternate with the guardrail has you've lost more room.
Well, the guardrail kind of takes almost the same space as the wall does.
Well, no, guardrail takes more space than the wall.
It may,
once again,
some, maybe
I'm gonna,
inches.
I'm going to keep saying, if we had drawn the bag, how much room you need for the bags in there and how many tables you really think you want, and show me you really need the 15. I guess where I'm going is, could you live with 12 feet? We can widen the sidewalk up to where your retaining wall is, and we can pull it to the south. We won't get 12 feet, but we'll get something wider than 5. I could live with a compromise like that personally. I'm only one vote. I'm not trying to influence everybody here. I'm just telling you what it would take for me to be comfortable with this. If you could take your 15 feet down to a smaller number, and design-wise, you talked about that stone wall underneath the fence, doing your best to match. I'd like to see I'd kind of like to see what the end products are going to be, some specifications on that, to know, once again, I believe you want that to happen, but because you're not around construction materials all day, the best you can do is go off of what your architect's telling you. And I know people made fun of me when I made the comment to you a few weeks ago, dazzle me. I'm still sitting here undazzled by the drawings. So, but it's only a set of drawings. Your desire has me much more interested than this paper does. And that's why I'm trying to come up
I
with
think
something
the difficulty
to work.
with the space and the saying whether I'm going to have a table here or whether I'm going to have what out there is it's flexible space. It's a patio. One night you might have a luau party out there. Who knows? And you got something out there for that motif. One night you might have maybe a karaoke guy out there for one night. But maybe you're playing beanbags one night. Maybe one night you got, some adult group that's having a candlelight and they just want to eat outside, and so you do put tables all across the whole thing. But it's flexible space is what it is, and that's why there is nothing other than a conceptual drawing of what might take place out there. It's all of those things, and obviously the tables have to withstand the 40-mile-an-hour wind or whatever Mr. Lewitton was talking about, but those may be foldable and be able to be moved or put away as they're needed,
Okay.
And as far as 15 feet, is not all that wide already. It's not that. It's borderline to being. If it was any less than that, it almost becomes unpractical.
All right. Well, my last question to you is along the lines of aesthetics. I know you're interested in
Could've done
not
this a
cutting
lot
certain
cheaper
not
if
cutting
I
certain
chose.
corners. I mean,
Yeah.
your desire is to do that masonry right, and I would like to make a suggestion once again to get me much more excited about this. You've got that canvas awning all the way over the tying the old mansard section in, and you're absolutely right. Emphasizing that horizontal line, tying
Right.
everything together is a unifying element. But I would have rather seen that as bring that bring that mansard structure all the way over and really tie it in that way. Or take the mansard
The
structure
mansard
off.
structure would probably be cheaper than the awning.
Or
I hate
take
to
the
tell you.
mansard structure off and continue the awning where that is. But if you want to tie it in, I mean, it's more than just the line. I mean, the material helps too. So once again, I mean, these are suggestions that if I saw them here, I'd be much more willing to
Well,
to
I
say
don't
yes
know.
on this.
I look around and I see awnings at places like Maggiano's and
On a building that they're
on-
designed
on
for,
a-
and on a building that doesn't
on a
already have
building
5
that's-
elevations.
No, it's got. Yeah, I beg to differ. It probably does have 3 or 4 different facades in that one building in Schaumburg, and they've got
Designed
an
by an-
awning just like the one I'm talking about.
Purposely designed by an architectural designer to look right,
Yeah.
not added over a course of 60 years. And I'm saying, there's a way to add things over the course of 60 years, bring it together, tie it together, and you're close. I think we're close. There're just some details. I'm just saying, as an individual sitting up here, not trying to lobby, not trying to direct how this is gonna go, that would be a much bigger selling point for me to, like I said, get excited and go, yes, let's do this. But the biggest thing and the only real issue here is really the sidewalk. And like I told you on July 23rd, you know, I'm not willing to live with a 5-foot sidewalk in the B4. Once again, it's a single vote. It's only myself. But if there was a way of compromise, you could definitely help convince me. Alderman Winger.
Thank you. Given the discussion and my knowledge of the situation, it's my sense that this, as presented, will not pass tonight. However, I do believe that there are some factors that
I
if
think
we
that's a
agreed on.
shame, but
I mean, it could. It's my sense that it won't.
Okay.
But there's 2 things that I believe could maybe change the situation. And that's regarding the sidewalk, because I know that is an issue for several of us. It's a concern. And I know we talked about it's possible to do the 10-foot sidewalk if you bring in the front to some degree. And if we can do something to those lines and do the sidewalk simultaneously, whether you put it in or we do a 50-50 split, we can discuss those particulars, but at least we would know a 10-foot sidewalk is going in, and we're not foregoing that future development. Because once we approve this, as you know, we can't reverse it. You know, we lose that space for good.
I don't know. I guess when I look at this whole project, it's a lot of money already, and it's an improvement to my building. It's an improvement to your sales tax base, and I don't know. I don't see even what a sidewalk that wide is even going to do in front of the bowling alley. I don't know that it's going to be any more pedestrian friendly than it is right at this second. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, honestly, if that bypass happens,
Well,
as
now
this
you're talking
council, well, no, as this council is as of today is behind the concept of it, and the concept of the city's downtown park just on the other side of the railroad tracks from you, we may not be that far away from having a very pedestrian-oriented area, and that sidewalk in front of you would tie in with the underpass and the park on the back side of you, and off to Wooddale Road.
And if I put it on the side, where would I be with the parking then if you do that project?
Well, I'm just responding to your concern that the sidewalk doesn't make sense. And as of September 10th, 2009, the way it's used today, no. But the B4, as has been said on a couple of different occasions tonight, it's zoning for the future. It's a combination of some key elements: the wide sidewalk, pedestrian orientation,
And do you feel
tall buildings and mixed use, and some future commercial and retail establishments.
Do you
and this
feel
whole area
that
might be walkable.
the future development would include putting the utilities underground eventually?
I've always wanted to do it if the money's
Okay,
there.
so why wouldn't you just put your 12-foot sidewalk then?
That's at this point. There's
And then
no
it would
money
be
there.
straight,
There's-
and it would be legal, and it would be fine, and my patio would still be there.
Yeah, well, there's a money issue. Mr. Clicker, I think, has identified a cost to do that, and if you can please share that with us.
My understanding, last time I've worked on projects where they've talked about undergrounding utilities, the general rule of thumb that they give you to go on is $1 million a mile to underground. relocating poles, they estimate somewhere between 300 to 400,000 per mile.
Okay, so at $1 million a mile, moving utility lines underground is not a key element of a B4 zoning district with pedestrian orientation if you can achieve the same goal another way. And by allowing you to go up to the sidewalk rather than stopping where you used to have to, 10 feet behind where you actually are now, like I've always said, I think everybody gets a little
Is that what
something out of it.
B2 was, 10 foot from the zero, from the lot line?
The B2 was 25 feet from the lot line, so you already encroached 10 feet into the setback. You were legal non-conforming. You were existing
I was
previously.
previously before they widened the road or previously when the building was built? I don't think I was non-conforming at all when the building was
I
built.
don't think there was a zoning ordinance when the building
I
was
think there
built.
probably was.
I don't think in 1942 anybody.
No, I'm talking
Watch
about
that.
1973, the last edition, when the parkway was deeded and everything else out there with the 25-foot parkway that existed back then, that doesn't exist
70
anymore.
76 when that happened. That was, the zoning ordinance happened in 76, so I don't, well, I can't speak for what happened when I was 4 years old, but, anyway. Yeah, Alderman Wesley.
You probably answered this, and I'm sorry I'm late. I had something going with my son today. My question, I heard conversation when I walked in about moving on the side of the building. My question to Ross on that, if he does move it to the side of the building, two things. What side of the building are we talking that he could move this on? Okay. Second of all, is he going below the requirement of parking spaces that is required by our code, I believe? You have to have so many parking spaces per square footage.
And is the floodplain an issue too?
And if you go on that one side, how does that affect the floodplain or floodway if you put on that side of the building? So if you can answer those questions for me, I would appreciate it.
As far as floodway concerns, if there are portions on the floodway, the patio would not be allowed to be constructed on the floodway. The wall would be considered an obstruction, which would not be allowed in the floodway. Floodplain, it could be allowed, provided there's compensatory storage provided. As far as parking, we would have to do an analysis of the site, count the number of spaces that are out there. I believe it would be very close if he were to lose spots, if he would meet the requirements.
But then if he does move it on the side, he would have to come back here for a variance to lower the parking radius than what our requirement is. Am I
If that were
correct?
the case, if that were, yes.
You have any idea how many parking spaces that he is required to have at that site at this time?
We went through this earlier. It's 3 spaces per lane.
I'm sorry.
And then based on the square footage in the bar area, we estimate it to be between 90 and 100 spots.
And Mr. Malone, how many, may I do one
We
follow-up?
went through that too. I
Okay, thank you.
didn't count them.
Alderman Coles?
I don't think you know, I've been sitting here listening for this hour and a half, and it seems like the same questions keep coming up and keep coming up. If they build this highway through his parking lot and take out his house, and he wants a patio on the side, he won't have any parking spaces on the left side, because that's where the street's supposed to come through, in between his house and, so that'll eliminate anything on the west side of the building. And if he put it on the east side of the building, he would lose approximately about 8 or 10 parking spaces on the east side. So you can't, I mean, the guy is trying to put it in the spot where the best spot for him, because, and everybody's going against the man. I mean, I've known Mike for 35 years. I've been bowling in the place when he was picking up the bottles, and when he was a kid. All right, that's going back a long time, Mike.
I've worked there
And
since
he's always been-
1971.
What?
I've worked there since 1971.
And he's been an honest guy as far as I'm concerned. And I go there every year, and I'm getting older and older, and he ain't kicked me out of there yet. And so.
There's a couple nights
I
he was
mean,
on the.
He mentioned it a couple times, but he's been honest with the city, and you people are killing him. You're killing him. Seriously. You don't listen to all the question. You keep repeating and repeating and repeating. The state says you can't put a 12-foot sidewalk there, period, without changing the poles. You can't change the poles unless you have it buried. So, I mean, you keep coming up with the same, we've been an hour and a half on this. This should have been done in 20 minutes. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. Thank you.
Well, Alderman Coles, yeah, I always respect your opinion, but tonight I'm leaning towards what Alderman Winger's gut feeling is that this may not approve as it is. If this thing went through in 20 minutes, I'm pretty darn sure that this wouldn't have been approved at any level. I'm sitting here as the chairman, willing to entertain some ideas on how to find a compromise to make this work. I see two options. We take a vote on whether or not to approve this, and I think the numbers might be there to deny, or we table this. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Manager, because normally this is a question I would ask the mayor, question of procedure. Would it be acceptable to ask the applicant if he has a preference to which motion goes on the floor? Mike, I think it's going to fail as it's designed. And
You're
if we-
asking me to read everybody's mind here and
No,
see-
Mike, I'm telling you, I think I'm going above and beyond by going this far. I think it's going to fail as it's designed. I think everybody up here wants some form of this to happen and to find a compromise. And unfortunately, I think any form of that compromise, and maybe Alderman Coles is right. Now, he's got a darn good point that moving it to the side, especially if that underpass goes in and you lose spaces, it could be a problem for you. But I think any other more realistic compromise would be something less deep than 15 feet. Now, I understand your need for flexibility, but like I say, I think the vote may be, as it's designed and presented to us, you might not pass. So I ask you, would you want us to vote on it, or would you, and we've tabled you a few times. I've sent you back to ZBA, and we've sent you back to ZBA. And I don't necessarily want to delay this anymore, but if we table it, we can begin to open up some dialogue. I'll be happy to sit down with you one-on-one or with one other alderman, so it's not a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and to do some brainstorming. I'm not asking you to read anybody's
if
mind.
You're telling
I'm
me
get-
it's not going to pass.
I-
Obviously,
well, I'm telling you,
I don't
I'm-
get much of a choice on this because
I'm telling you how
I
I'm
want
gonna
it to
vote.
pass.
Okay. Alderman Wesley.
Well, I will tell you, Mike, if it fails here,
I got to go back to the beginning. You're telling me.
it may not pass the council. What we try and hear, and I got here late, but the feeling that I got tonight.
I don't understand. If it's voted no here, then it still goes to council with a recommendation of no.
Right. And
And
most
then-
likely, our recommendation ain't going to change there. We are giving you the opportunity, and I think the feeling that I got coming in late here, I don't think it's going to pass. I would like to look at this situation, and we take it back to our next committee meeting. Meanwhile, you can meet with, like John says, if you want to meet with him, and try and meet. Believe me, no one on this council wants to shoot this whole project down. I think we're willing to work with you, but there's a lot of feedback here now, and if we have some meetings with one-on-one with you or two aldermen, so we don't have Open Meeting Act, I think we could reach a compromise. I'm just saying, if the vote is tonight and it's denied, and you decide to come back, you're going on back to zoning and board. So that's one nutshell.
I guess I should ask you to table it for right now and talk about it some more. I'm not saying that I won't come back and ask you to vote on the same thing I'm looking at right now, but I'm willing to at least look at it and exhaust all the other possibilities. But
I think
I think you
we are
guys,
too.
I think you guys should be able to come closer to me.
Well, It's, if one party's gonna give on something, I think both have to. So, let's just go ahead, I'll make the motion to table. Is there a second?
A second. Then the next
Oh, let's do a roll call, please.
committee meeting?
To the next, yeah, table the next committee meeting. Roll call.
Alderman Shockey?
Yes.
Alderman Winger?
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Cadella?
Yes.
Alderman Police?
Yes.
Alderman Coles?
Abstain.
Alderman Roy Wesley?
Yes.
Alderman Lewitton?
Yes.
Okay, motion to table to next committee passes.
Take a break.
5-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene the.
Was that Dutch Elms, or did you assume it was on Fourth Street? I think I saw. No, it was. Yeah, it's done. What about all the ones on Friday? Go ahead. Okay.
All right, we will call the Planning, Zoning, and Building Committee meeting of September 10th, 2009 back to order. Will the minute taker please show that all the same members are present from the last roll, with the exception of the inclusion of Alderman Eugene Wesley? All right, you're welcome. All right, the next item is report and recommend.